I'm your host, Alec Crawford, founder and CEO of Artificial Intelligence Risk Inc., and this is AI Risk Reward, a podcast about balancing the risk and reward of using AI personally, professionally, and as a large organization. We will discuss hot topics such as, will AI take my job or make it better? When I ask ChatGPT work questions, is that even safe? From an ethical perspective, is it enough for big companies to anonymize private data before using it? Probably not. I'm discussing these issues with AI experts to answer burning questions and stay ahead of the curve on AI. I'd also like to give a shout out to our podcast producer and audio engineering team at Troutman Street Audio. You can check them out on LinkedIn. Welcome everyone to the AI Risk Reward podcast. And our very special guest today is Eric Cook, founder and CEO of Cook Technology Solutions, which has been part of WSI since 2007, and also founder and chief mentor at the LinkedBanker. Welcome, Eric.
Hey, thank you very much. I appreciate you having me on, Alec.
Well, great to see you not live and in person like we were in Boston a few weeks ago. As the mastermind behind the LinkedBanker, let's kind of start there, like a passionate advocate for digital transformations and banking. Like, tell us the origin story there. How did that
so I spent 15 years as a banker myself. My father was a banker for 33 years. I had no intention of going into banking. So I'm what they refer to as an accidental banker. And there's a lot of them in the industry where they just kind of fall into banking and never leave. I'm also affectionately referred to as an SOB, which is son of a banker. That usually elicits some chuckles from the audience when I mutter that from stage. But I was a banker for 15 years, built my first website for marshallsavings.com, which no longer exists after like 6 mergers and acquisitions. But built my first bank website back in 1995. And that is probably what set me on the path of being a digital consultant and doing what I'm doing today. And I would say my father's comment to me when I decided that I really wanted to do this banking thing for real is that people will choose to bank with you because they see you as their banker, not just because you work in the bank. And so that's one of the big reasons why, we started the WSI agency to serve banks back in 2007 when I left the bank. But we started the LinkedBanker in 2020 to serve banking professionals to help them understand how to build a personal brand and establish themselves as a subject matter expert in an online world. And so we've been doing that now for a number of years and have an online community and do monthly mastermind calls. And it's just been a really great network of banking professionals from around the country that come together and support each other and trying to really add value to our customers and the communities that we serve and hopefully generate some business and bring people into the bank as part of that process.
Well, that sounds awesome. Look, our theme really is, digital innovation and banking, which obviously we're going to get to AI, in a minute. But look, there's lots of banks that are still in a situation where they're like, maybe they don't have an app yet or whatever, right? Like, this is going to be super important to draw in younger customers. Like if you don't have an app and you're trying to attract Gen Z, good luck. So what are kind of a handful of things a bank just getting into digital banking should do?
Well, I'm going to be, it sounds a little self-serving here, but we build websites for banks. So I think obviously a bank website as a strategic tool, not just as a necessary evil we just need a place for somebody to go get our product information and access online banking. You're selling yourself short if that is the approach to your website. It's probably the most busiest, if that's even proper English. Sorry, Mrs. Grove, if you're listening. But it's probably the busiest branch office in your entire network. And a lot of, especially community banks, either haven't gotten their head around using it as a strategic sales tool, or the budget scares them. But the reality is you've got people coming to this site day in and day out, sometimes multiple times a day. And so having a website that you can easily get in and make updates to, that is flexible, that's powerful and secure, that gives you a platform to be able to produce content at scale through blogging and other sorts of article creation. That's really where, as a bank, you're going to demonstrate your subject matter expertise. And in the age of AI-powered SEO, content matters even more with, how reputable are you? How knowledgeable are you? Those are all things that you can demonstrate through a powerful website that gives you publishing capabilities. And then building visibility around that through search engine marketing. I mentioned, SEO and how it's being impacted by artificial intelligence, but you've got digital advertising and social media engagement. And when I think of social media, I go back to the LinkedBanker. It's not just the bank being participatory in social media, but it's the key individuals within the bank that are spending time on social media, networking and connecting with others, and building that we bank with a banker, not just necessarily a bank. And unfortunately, there are a lot of bankers and banks themselves that maybe don't put as much of a priority on that as maybe what they should. And so that's really where I see a lot of potential with obviously the LinkedBanker in making sure that when you show up online, that might be the first impression somebody's going to have of you. And you may be the best banker since sliced bread, but if that digital first impression falls short, they may not come back to schedule a call or to meet you in person to realize that you are an expert. You do know what you're talking about and your customers do love you. That needs to be communicated digitally before people even reach out and talk to you personally, I think.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Look, as the founder and CEO of a startup, I totally understand how important branding is and how important making showing what makes you unique is important, right? You're one of 9,000 banks and credit unions in the US. Why should someone call you?
Yep, exactly. Point on.
So in terms of, so tell us a little bit more about your relationship with WSI, and then we'll roll into some AI questions here.
Sure, absolutely. So when I made the decision as a banker that, unlike my father, I did not want to be the CEO of a publicly traded bank, I looked at what were the things in my life that were bringing me the most joy at the time. And it was digital transformation. It was where the web was headed. We were one of the first banks in Michigan to bring the MortgageBot online lending platform online. And I got an opportunity to speak at the Michigan Bankers Association's lending conference. And that kind of gave me the itch to do something beyond the bank. And I had a couple of other experiences in my life that started to reveal the power of the online community and networking and bringing people together. And I kind of was putting all the pieces together and said, this is something that I feel that needs to be part of my life moving forward. And if I can figure out a way to incorporate the world of banking as part of that process, because watching it with my father and then experiencing it for 13 of my 15 years working alongside him, saw how good of a relationship builder he was. And that taught me to do the same within our community. So I started looking around to see what options existed. And I actually came across WSI through a newsletter called sixfigurejobs.com. Didn't know it was a franchise at the time. And in retrospect, had I known it was a franchise, I probably would not have clicked on the banner because I had a perception of what a franchise was, being limiting and controlling and restrictive. Plus, I, at the time, didn't really want to launch a business and have employees. I was looking for someone to pay me six figures to do a job and healthcare and retirement and all the other bonuses that go along with it. But as luck would have it, I fell in love with the model and gave it a shot. And here we are now, going to be starting our 19th year. And in a very ironic twist of fate, WSI Corporate, which has offices in countries around the world, we've got several hundred locations, also been around since 1995, which is when I built my first website. Submitted my name to the International Franchise Association for consideration, the 2024 Franchisee of the Year. And the person that did not want to buy a franchise ended up getting selected as a 2024 IFA Franchisee of the Year recipient. And so that was pretty humbling. I got to go to Vegas and collect my award and be around a lot of other franchisees from around the world and just further saw the value of this business model because it gives me the flexibility to tap into a vast network of knowledge and capability and capacity. But yet our model is unique in that I've chosen to niche myself down into the banking vertical and build how I want to build and price how I want to price and deliver services the way I want to deliver. And you wouldn't be able to do that in a McDonald's. Say, I want to put lobster on the menu, or I want to make a taco. The clown's going to come after you and tell you, no, that's not how we do things here at McDonald's. But WSI really is built a best of both worlds franchise model that I've very much enjoyed. And most of my deep friendships now have come out of the WSI world with colleagues and compatriots around the world. So I really look forward to our conventions and spending time with everybody in the WSI network when I can.
I really want to see the clown coming after you video later.
Careful what you wish for. I do have Sora. Awesome. I can make that happen.
I know you can
make that happen. AI can do anything, right?
Right. Yeah. So, look, just so the audience knows, you and Artificial Intelligence Risk Inc. are partnering on AI technology. AI risk is really focused on security and privacy and regulatory compliance for AI for banks.
I believe you call that GRCC, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, AI GRCC, governance, risk, compliance, and cybersecurity. Yeah, people are probably sick of hearing me say that. But turning more to the use case side. Again, you've got a bank, they've got a nice website, all that good stuff, not really using AI. What are some use cases banks are coming to you and saying, Eric, we got to make this work. This is so cool. We got to do this.
I wish I was hearing that. That's not what I hear. A lot of times, and I hear that every once in a while, don't get me wrong. If any of my banker friends that have actually said that to me are listening, I don't want to offend you and say I've never heard that before. But in a lot of cases, I think there is the fear and trepidation and curiosity around AI and how they get started. And what's really interesting is at a smaller scale, to a certain effect, I heard that similar concern when I left banking and I started in 7, 8, 9. I was starting to get opportunities to speak and present at conferences because I was a digital strategist, but I also understood banking. So I was a little bit of a unicorn in the space. And there were a lot of banks that were petrified of Facebook and Twitter. LinkedIn was just a resume farm and they didn't want their staff out on LinkedIn because they thought they would just be looking for a new job. And so that fear and trepidation that banks had around social media with, we'll never use it, it's a reputation risk, it's a privacy risk, it's a productivity risk, all the reasons why it's bad. At the end of the day, banks manage risk for a living, whether it's a mortgage or access to online banking, or you give somebody a debit card that has access to their checking account. There's various levels of risk. And as bankers, we have to manage and mitigate that to determine what makes the most sense. Yeah. So we're now doing that with a lot of banks from an AI perspective to try to help them understand where the risks really are, but more importantly, where the risks aren't, because I've heard some doozies, and understand that your goal isn't to chase a shiny object or just bring in ChatGPT or fire up Copilot for all your employees just because. You need to identify business relevant use cases in order to make it worth your time. And that on the surface seems like a really simple and easy thing to say and like, oh yeah, well, duh. But the problem with artificial intelligence, as you well know, is this is a technology that has never existed in the existence of humankind. And so we've never had software that we collaborate with, that we talk to, that it talks back to us, that can have, at certain levels, a mind of its own if you give it the ability to do that by telling it to lean into a particular persona or a skill set. And so one of the challenges that we often have to overcome with a lot of folks that we talk to is realizing or getting them to realize that this is not like rolling out the next coolest version of Excel or a new LOS or an upgraded, core banking platform. This is keys to a car that we have never driven before. This might even not be a car. This is a spaceship that travels time, that can shift and change its size. This is something that has never been done before. And we're all driving minivans and SUVs. And if we get in this and we try to drive it like we've always driven any other vehicle that we've been given the keys to, we're going to be severely disappointed because it doesn't perform like we've expected. And so what we've talked about a lot is that AI mind shift, that intuition, that AI adoption, that AI literacy is getting people to understand what this can actually do for them. And through training, which we offer, we often focus on non-banking related activities. We like to go off the banking grid because when we start talking about, well, let's develop a bank product, let's talk about a bank process, let's do a bank service, immediately the banker is going to be, whether intentionally or unconsciously, encumbered by, well, we can't do that because of compliance, we can't do that because of risk. One of the exercises that we love to do in our classes is we actually run the bankers through small group of, you are a startup launching a backpack company. And we give them basically big picture instructions. You need to come up with a strategic plan, a focus, images of what your backpack's going to look like, a marketing plan, social media posts, a profit and loss statement, a partnership, list of who's going to be, supplying you the goods and services that you need to build your backpack. And when they get outside of banking, there are no regulatory restrictions to creating a backpack company. And they have all these really cool ideas that they don't have to say, oh, compliance wouldn't let us do that, or security wouldn't let us do that. They can go as crazy as they want. And they've come up with some really amazing ideas and concepts. But more importantly, after that training takes place, light bulbs start popping. And we start seeing eyeballs like, oh, if I could do that, I wonder how I could do that in the banking industry. So now they're open to the idea because they've seen it work. And now it gets back to, we manage risk for a living. We should be figuring out how we can manage those risks and empower capabilities versus taking those risks and restricting us from being able to do things. And so that's kind of a relatively long-winded recap of our approach. And, kind of paraphrasing a 4-grid structure that I had taken away from the Marketing AI Institute, we like to say, if there's something that you're doing that involves data, if it's repetitive, if it's time consuming, or if it's generative, chances are, if it falls into one or many of those 4 buckets, there's probably a use case where artificial intelligence can provide you some assistance. And so that helps identify some of those business use cases to be able to determine, okay, well, how could we actually use AI in our organization to solve one of those, or maybe all 4 of those problems with any given task or activity.
And now a word from our sponsor. Artificial Intelligence Risk Inc. accelerates adoption of Gen AI safely. They provide the governance, risk, compliance, and cybersecurity platform that financial, healthcare, and other regulated organizations need before they can use Gen AI safely and in compliance with regulatory requirements. Their software has won #1 awards for cybersecurity and compliance from Waters Technology. Find them at aicrisk.com. Yeah, it totally makes sense. I mean, one of the mistakes I think I've seen out there, not just with banks, but with companies in general, is, and I ask this question, I say, hey, if you rolled out a new client relationship management system, like, would you training for that? And everybody goes, absolutely, that's required. And I said, but yet you've rolled out AI and haven't done any training, right? It's free, right?
Well, to that end, and I know you asked the question as well, and you weren't there to be part of my morning kickoff about AI at the Mass Bankers, but I started off with 3 questions. One, I wanted to know how many people were using it, never used it, but using it monthly, weekly, or daily, and saw a lot of weekly and daily hands go up. And then asked the question at the end, how many of you have an AI policy and established vision, and you've received training from your bank on how to use AI? And out of the entire room, and there were probably a little over 100 bankers present, I think I saw 5 hands go up.
Yeah.
And when asking about how they're using it, how often, there was probably 60% of the room said weekly or daily. And I said, does that seem like a problem to you all? Because you just told me literally 30 seconds ago that you're using it on a weekly or a daily basis, but yet you've not received any training. Where are you getting your training? TikTok, YouTube, podcasts, blog articles. And if you're not getting it from the bank, you don't know where the rails are. You don't know where your limits are. You don't know what you can and can't do. So you might unintentionally be getting your bank and yourself in hot water. And we definitely don't want that to be the case. So there is a huge disconnect there with delivering that training to bankers so that they understand the literacy, the adoption, the intuition, and then tying that back to actual processes that will produce business results. So
totally makes sense. Yeah. Look, policies are great, but you have to have software like the AIR software that puts the guardrails in place.
Totally.
So people are going to follow the policies whether they want to or not, right? So that's kind of the best way to do it. So shifting more to kind of philosophical questions about AI, like as you see banks adopting AI, what concerns you in terms of ethical considerations, maybe around security or privacy of consumers, things like that? You know, obviously some banks are using AI to help with credit decisions. I mean, there's all kinds of ethical questions here.
Yeah, I think the real important part in all of this is the human in the loop, the making sure that anytime something comes out of an artificial intelligence platform, you have someone that understands that process, review it. And I refer to it as give it the sniff test. Does this smell funny? If this were something that came across my desk that a employee, an intern, one of my staff members created, would this pass my sniff test as a seasoned banking executive? And if it doesn't, you need to push back. And these platforms are going to do their best to try to make you happy, to try to solve as many problems as they possibly can. They've been trained on human data, and humans are not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. So it's not a surprise that oftentimes they make mistakes. And so that's the first thing. And I know that folks that are listening to your podcast, probably I'm preaching to the choir here, but that's a really important thing because that can help mitigate 99% of the potential issues that exist from an ethical perspective. Review everything with a critical eye, maybe even take it to committee, get a couple of people to review it on different angles, make sure that it abides by your existing compliance requirements and underwriting guidelines, and question everything that comes out of the platform. I think one of the biggest risks, because I think banks by their nature are very conservative and are going to tread cautiously. If anything, I think the biggest risk is they're going to wait too long to try to embrace these things because the ethical and the security and the reputation and the branding risks that exist are going to keep them on the sidelines, and they're not going to step on the field to make an effort. And that, I think, will put especially the community banks that we work with further and further behind the competition. And that, to me, is probably the biggest risk from an AI perspective, and what gets me popping out of bed in the morning, because I know there's just tremendous opportunity to help these folks really understand the right ways to embrace and lean into this technology.
Yeah, I mean, when talking about AI and results from AI, I always say trust but verify, right? So
absolutely.
Kind of like Ronald Reagan and the Russians, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so totally agree with that. And look, I also agree like looking forward, you've got just a handful of banks adopting AI, community banks adopting AI, and maybe they're trying Copilot or whatever.
Yeah.
If it's 2027 and you don't have an AI policy and an AI strategy and AI up and running at your bank, like you're gonna have a problem, like pretty soon, because the banks that are doing it, and obviously you can look at JP Morgan and Jamie Dimon, who is all in on AI and spending $15 billion a year on it.
With the B.
Go, yeah, maybe he's going the right direction, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and the other thing that I think, and this is one of the big reasons why we so enjoy our partnership, is I'm not saying that Copilot doesn't have a place in the world of banking or in business in general. If anything, it's integrated into their office productivity suite. It's easy to manage licenses for staff. And there's likely a good majority of people within any organization, quite honestly, that may not need heavy lifting or sophisticated AI solutions. You might be able to build a Copilot agent or some sort of a routine inside of the Microsoft ecosystem that works just fine, but don't settle for just that. And, that's one of the big things that I think any organization needs to look at. And we test platforms all the time. Anytime I do something, especially if it has any sort of material value, I'm always putting it into ChatGPT. It's going into Gemini now, which is getting a whole lot better. It goes into Claude. I'll throw it into Copilot just out of curiosity. It's getting better, but Copilot runs on an OpenAI backbone. So having an OpenAI ChatGPT ability within a bank to be able to explore will at least allow for you to maybe get a precursor of what's coming into the Copilot ecosystem. But using just one platform is a limiting strategy. And at the Macon conference that I was at in Cleveland, which is where this Rock and Roll Hall of Fame sign was snapped behind me, Mike Caputo, as their chief content officer, did a session, talked about going from a soloist to a conductor and being able to essentially stand in front of a room full of musicians and be able to articulate the music that comes out of each of those instruments instead of just working with a soloist that is just really good at guitar or really good at saxophone or the piano. When you pull that entire band together between percussion and strings and wind and brass, that gives you a sound that can be hard to match. And that's really kind of the vision of the AI infrastructure that we're trying to embrace, is find partners and processes and platforms and technologies and capabilities that allow for you to evolve to that conductor role so that you can bring in whatever tool you need in order to satisfy that particular issue or challenge or meet that business objective.
Yeah, I totally agree. Look, you got to future-proof your bank with AI. You can't just have all your chips on OpenAI or Copilot. That's just not a great strategy.
Absolutely.
There are two things that we do that I think are super important. Is one is we have an AI agent library and agents that can talk to other agents. Like that's the future here, right? Not necessarily just a chat bot, and being able to do that securely is super important. And the other is obviously workflows where, onboarding a new employee or whatever, like really saving time there, literally hours of people's time a week is really where some of the great use cases are. So thinking about brand new CEO, community bank, mid-sized community bank, inherits the mantle, calls you up and goes, Eric, I just took this job. Like, I need some advice. What should I do? Like, what would you tell that brand new CEO?
Well, tongue in cheek, I would say hire us and we'll take care of it. But that obvious answer thrown out here. One of the things that we do at WSI that I think is very helpful, regardless of whether you move forward with us or not, we participate with the bank and do what we refer to as a preliminary AI assessment. And that process involves, it's not without cost. I mean, you're pulling resources, out of production to sit into an hour-long meeting. So there's obviously an opportunity cost there. But there's no charge from us to do this. And so you bring in the line level managers of your bank that understand what it is that you want to accomplish and what might be holding you back from accomplishing those goals. And we intentionally, even though it's called a preliminary AI assessment, we intentionally stay away from asking questions like, okay, Alec, so tell me, you're new CEO, how do you think AI could be used inside of your bank as CEO? Because you might not have a foggy clue and you don't know what you don't know. You might know a little bit, and that's going to restrain your ability from being able to answer comprehensively and then be a little guarded. Or you might have heard something that's completely inaccurate and say, well, I know definitely we don't want to do it for credit underwriting because it does all sorts of bad things and blah, 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 blah. But instead, we sit down and we say, okay, CEO, HR, marketing, lending, operations, cyber, what do you want to accomplish? What's in your roadmap? Where are your goals? Where do you want to be in the next 12 months, 24, 36 months? Okay, now what's keeping you from getting there? What's keeping you from 10xing that to a level that you would never even think of? Oh, well, we've got this and this and this and this. So we capture all that information. We capture the entire discussion. We have AI note takers on the call. We bring that back into our team. We use some strategically designed tools within our WSI ecosystem that have business plan and other sorts of conversations. And it looks at that information and generates a comprehensive report that's then provided back to the bank as a, hey, this is what we heard over just the hour conversation. This is what we heard. Here are a dozen things where we think AI could potentially provide you assistance right out of the gate, knowing that there's probably deeper conversations on the horizon that could help us uncover even more. But just from that 1 hour conversation, here's a dozen things that we think AI could do. And half of them are going to be like, yeah, we figured, yep, we think about that. But then there's going to be another half of those that are going to be, oh, I guess I didn't think of that. I could do that. Oh, I didn't know it could do that. Or, oh, that's a really good idea. Nobody ever thought of that. So it gives us some insights, but we intentionally focus on the business goals, because to ask you, how do you think AI, that's not a fair question, because you're not in it. You're not in the weeds. You're not reading and presenting and speaking and networking and have a clear understanding of everything that's capable. That's where you need to bring in someone that you trust. Very similar to an attorney when you've got a complicated legal matter, or a CPA, accountant, firm, if you've got your financials. This is getting to the complexity, and then you tie in other digital initiatives around that. It's really hard, especially for a smaller organization like a community bank, to really get their arms around everything that's going on in the AI and the digital space. And that's really where we have found a sweet spot with our clients.
Yeah, totally makes sense. So aligning with the bank's strategy and their values, right? And then preventing that, what we call failure of imagination, right? Or
yeah,
like, AI,
absolutely.
what do I do with this stuff, right?
Yeah,
like,
I don't know. You're the expert. You tell me.
Right. And that's why we also have the AI library too, right? Where you can go in and look at, 100 agents. Not that you're going to use them all, but you might see one and go, whoa, I can use an AI agent to figure out how to position my bank better for generative AI search. Great. Let's do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. So let's shift into the final part of the show, which is a lightning round.
The lightning round.
Where we talk about whether something is underrated or overrated, and then maybe a brief description why. So, of course,
right.
You live in the in Michigan, so I'm gonna have to. It's close enough to Wisconsin, right? So we're gonna have to.
A lot of people think that I'm from Wisconsin, to be honest with you. I spend a lot of time there through the graduate school of banking, and we've got a lot of clients in Wisconsin. So I love Wisconsin. So.
Yeah, me too. I'm a huge frozen custard fan. And the question I have for you is, cheese curds, underrated or overrated?
Oh man, they are so underrated. Every time I go back to Wisconsin, I got to get me some cheese curds. I usually get the fresh ones, and what you don't know unless you're from Wisconsin, if you bite into them and they don't make your teeth squeak, they're not fresh. So
Yeah.
squeaky curds are the best. And then I always try to find a nice spotted cow from New Glarus to wash it down. Don't tell border control here in Michigan, but I smuggle some back to Michigan whenever I go to Wisconsin. It's only available in Wisconsin, so I got to bring back my spotted cow across the Wisconsin-Michigan border. I'm probably going to get searched next time, but that's okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure border control is watching the show, but
or they care about my beer preferences.
Yeah, not really. Fortune cookie messages, underrated or overrated?
I think boy, that's a good one. I did not see that coming. I'm going to say underrated, because I do have a saying that, and I don't remember where it was. It was on my monitor before I made the last move, and that monitor no longer exists. But I had a fortune cookie, like statement or whatever. You flip it over from your numbers, and it said, "Do what you love what you do." And I had that taped to my monitor. I don't need it because I remember it, but that came out of a fortune cookie, and I feel like I'm living that.
Yeah, that is so awesome. Metallica, underrated or overrated?
I would like to say underrated, because I absolutely love them and they're one of my favorite bands of all time. I don't know how anybody could underrate Metallica. I mean, going more than 40 years, the songs that they put out, a lot of people don't realize they have a charitable effort called All Within My Hands that every time they go into a city, they volunteer, they raise money for charitable work. There are a lot of things about Metallica that I think are underrated if you really peel back the onion, beyond just their just amazing, thrashy, intense music. So.
Awesome. Pontoon boating, underrated or overrated? And of course, it must include alcohol.
Oh, absolutely. I would again say underrated. I feel like you're picking all my favorite things, and I'm going to say underrated for everything. We are very proud pontoon boat owners, and a spotted cow or something to that effect will definitely make it out. My only problem is with travel and kind of being with bankers, I don't nearly get as much time on the pontoon with my wife and golden retrievers that I would like. So I would say to that effect, severely underrated, because I would like to be doing a lot more of that.
Absolutely. Fixing stuff by using Chat GPT, underrated or overrated?
That is an underrated skill. And I know that you put this in here because of our little pre-session conversation. As one who lives in northern Michigan can attest, we get snow and you need a snow blower. And we had some very heavy snow this weekend. I went out with the snow blower and proceeded to take it right into a very chunky, I don't know what it's officially called, a snow drift that was very heavy. And I immediately stopped blowing snow. So I took it back in, tried to fix it, didn't know. And I fired up ChatGPT and I pressed the voice mode and the cute British female voice. I acknowledge this in conferences and in front of people, so it's no surprise. But I said, hey, can you help me figure out how I can change the tension on the belt? And she said, you need to take the cover off and the tensioner pulley. And I was like pointing at things and talking to her, and she was leading me in. And wouldn't you know it, I fixed it. And
Wow.
I was out blowing snow this morning. So whatever you need to do, you have a little Mr. or Mrs. Fix-It in your pocket to help walk you and guide you through that process. That is one of those unknowns that I think a lot of people really should be taking more advantage of.
Yeah, and it's not rude enough yet to say, Eric, you bloody idiot, before giving you instructions to fix something.
Exactly. Although she is getting pretty spicy. I've seen a lot of reports where AI is getting a little bit more randy and having a little bit more.
That's
of a
intentional, for better or worse. So you definitely need guardrails for your bank around that.
Yeah, exactly.
Running marathons as a hobby, underrated or overrated?
I would say for me at this point in my life, probably overrated. I would love to run a marathon. I think that would be a really cool experience, and I might do it someday. But you really need to be committed to that. And I had an incident back in August that put me on the sidelines for a little bit. Blew my hamstring. Long story, but I'm better now. No surgery, but it really made me appreciate the ability to get up and walk and run and bike. And so things in moderation, respect your body. If you can do it, that's awesome. I'm more of a cyclist, so I'd much rather go out and pedal my bike. And then at 200 and, well, let's just say I'm Clydesdale category. Running a marathon is probably not a good biomechanical activity for this big oaf. So I was a football lineman for a reason, probably, and that's not to run marathons.
Fair enough. The book, Think Like a Brand, Not a Bank, underrated or overrated?
I'd say underrated to a great deal. And as luck would have it, I happen to have my little cup of coffee. So Allison and Liz are going to love this. I'll have to make sure. Hold on, let me take a sip.
Put that in the show notes for sure. Right?
I would say for anybody, doesn't necessarily need to be a bank, although it certainly rings true from a banker's perspective. The lessons in that book, I mean, it's a quick read. It has great insights, but it really focuses on identifying who it is that you are best positioned to serve. And it's okay not to feel like you got to be all things to all people. And I think a lot of community banks struggle with that because they don't want to alienate someone. They don't want to do marketing that puts people on the outside. So they offer generic messages and big picture branding statements. And if you try to be everything to everybody, you're nothing to everybody because you don't ring true and you don't speak the message that hits with a particular segment. And that's really what that bank talks about. I heard a rumor that there might be a Think Like a Brand 2 in the works. Can't confirm or deny that, but if that does happen, I'm pretty excited about its arrival. And hopefully that will actually come to fruition because it's a great book and I've referred it to all of my banker friends. But it doesn't have to be just a bank. Any business can benefit from understanding who it is that they are best positioned to serve and to really build that around your brand.
All right. Next is the restaurant scene in Northern Michigan, underrated or overrated?
Kind of non-existent. Can I go with option C?
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean,
that's fair.
We can travel to Traverse City and they've got some nice restaurants, but you know, if you don't like, and I'm not opposed to bar food and a good, fried cheese stick. It's hard to get cheese curds here. Fried mushrooms. I'll fry anything up here. Not exactly the best for your health. They are tasty, but it would be nice if we had a little bit better culinary options, but I get it. That's not what this place is known for where we live. So we do a lot of cooking inside, or we travel, or when we go someplace, we look for really good restaurants to get a nice meal.
And finally, the movie Blade Runner, underrated or overrated? Which
one? First or second?
One. The
first one. I think underrated. I'm a fan of that. It definitely had some provocative themes early on that are kind of evolving to today. I mean, there's a number of movies out there that were like predicting the future of where things were headed. And so go back and watch it. Don't judge the special effects because at the time they were amazing. But the storyline, kind of a cool throwback. So
awesome. Cool. Well, Eric, thank you for coming on the show. This has been Eric Cook, founder and CEO of Cook Technology Solutions, part of WSI since 2007, and founder and chief mentor at the LinkedBanker. Thank you for coming on the show, Eric.
Excellent. Thanks for having me, Alec. I appreciate it. Good chatting with you.
That was a lot of fun. Tell listeners how they can find you.
Sure. I spend probably most of my time over on LinkedIn. Eric Cook MBA is my LinkedIn handle. That's usually where I spend most of my time. I dabble on Facebook and Instagram. I don't spend a tremendous amount of time on the Twitterverse, the Xverse, whatever it's called. LinkedIn's really where I enjoy spending most of my time, or on a bicycle somewhere in northern Michigan. So if you are ever traveling north and want to go for a bike ride, I have a garage with a boatload of bicycles, and I always love company. So come on up.
Awesome. And how about website addresses?
So our business, WSI, is www.poweredbywsi.com. And you can learn more about the LinkedBanker at www.thelinkedbanker.com.
Awesome. Eric, great to have you on the show.
Cool. Thanks, Alec.
You are listening to the AI Risk Reward Podcast with your host, Alec Crawford. You can find us anywhere you listen to podcasts, for example, Apple Podcasts. Production and sound engineering by Troutman Street Audio. You can find them on LinkedIn. Please like, subscribe, and comment.